So Ultimate Spider-Man finally unmasks who's behind Mysterio's helmet, and trust me, I did not see this coming, and neither did you. Now we're jumping back here into Jonathan Hickman's Ultimate Spider-Man here with issue number 16, where we also get some juicy secrets about the Osborn's real agenda here. But listen, I am getting ahead of myself here, so let's dive right into it. So when we pick up on things, we see Gwen Stacy here right in front of this tombstone here that says "In loving memory, Harry Osborn." And as we continue on, we see her standing alone, but then we hear these words, or we see these words that say, "Life isn't fair." Now, when we see who's talking, we jump here to this flashback, and it's George Stacy talking to a little Gwen Stacy. And he mentions how he wishes that it wasn't how things are, but it is Gwen. And because of what just recently happened, how things are going to be different now. And what George is talking about here is the loss of Gwen Stacy's mother. But in this, he still tells Gwen, he's like, "But I have to keep doing my job." And right then and there, you know that this George Stacy, well, the job he's talking about is not being the prominent member here of the New York City Police Department. He's talking about something else entirely here, and we'll see that as we move on. But in all of this, all Gwen wants to know is, will I ever feel better, or will it ever feel better? But George just simply lets her know, he's like, no one ever gets past losing somebody that they love. But the good news is that they're never really gone, they live on. And what they're doing here is that they're making a correlation, right, or the comparison between Gwen Stacy losing her mother and of course losing Harry, because in this next scene here, we get another flashback where we see an older Gwen Stacy here talking to Harry Osborn. And they have this little banter here going on. Gwen starts off by saying, "I like you, Harry Osborn." And Harry is like, "Well, I'm glad we had that in common, because I just so happen to like myself as well." Gwen mentions, she's like, "You want to know a secret?" To which Harry is like, "Of course, I love secrets." So she says, "The truth is, I didn't ever think that I'd like you. I hate rich people." And then Harry responds back, he's like, "Hey, well, good thing I'm not just rich, I'm wealthy." And then she continues on, she's like, "And ridiculous and humble." So then he adds back, he's like, "Do you want to know my secret?" And she's like, "I'd love to." And he continues on, he's like, "I don't like you at all, Gwen Stacy, I love you." To which she responds, "I know, I love you too." Now in the midst of dinner here, they're starting to make these plans because it looks like Gwen Stacy was getting ready to meet Harry Osborn's parents. But then in the middle of that conversation, Gwen Stacy's phone goes off, and there's a slight look of shock on her face. And when she gets off the call, she says, "They found him. They found my father." And then we go back to this flashback here where we see George Stacy talking to Gwen again as a little girl. And he mentions how no one ever gets past losing somebody that you love. But the good news is that they're never really gone. They live on in your heart, and no one can take that away from you. And he continues, he's like, "You see, as the years pass, your memory of mom won't change, and you get to remember her in a way that most children would, perfectly, not ruined by age or learning that parents are regular people and flawed, just like everyone else." And the little Gwen just says, she's like, "No, I'll always think you're perfect, Dad." To where he responds, he's like, "Well, I'm not. I have secrets that many in the world, and especially you, won't find out about until I'm gone." And as he continues on, you see George Stacy's eyes, they turn green. As he continues on by saying, "You might not understand who I was. People might say bad things about me. They might say nothing at all because the mystery will hold," which gives you a clue already, right? "Just understand one thing. Everything I've done was for you, so you will understand this world as it really is. And that's my legacy to you." And then we jump to see here another flashback, which is the aftermath here of that phone call that she had when she was having dinner with Harry. And there's a voice that says to her, "After years of trying, we finally recovered your father's remains. They didn't want to give them up. They didn't want us to complete. But now, thanks to good fortune and circumstance, his final wish can come to pass. He wanted you to take his place and join us." And then we see Gwen Stacy looking into this Mysterio dome as a voice continues on to say, "Do you know the words?" And then she says the words that she knows, which are that the world is a lie. And only through embracing those lies and becoming a master of them can we truly see. And she continues on, she says, "Our craft is old, older than the lie. Our power is ageless. The amulet passed from sire to spawn, 1 to wear it, 5 to share it. We are Mysterio." And as the ritual goes on, we see these 4 other men that are sitting with her as we see this green energy here coming out of this dome. And then we see that Mysterio symbol hit her forehead with an older gentleman saying, "Welcome, sister." Like, what a twist, right? But listen, real quick, if you want to support the channel here and get early access, behind the scenes stuff, or just help us to keep going here on Keepin' It Comic, you can join the Keepin' It Comic fam right now here on YouTube with our memberships here by hitting that join button. Or you can also go over to our Patreon as well, where you can also become a member there. The link is going to be down below in the description. It means a lot to us here, and it helps us to keep bringing you these breakdowns every single week. We appreciate you. Now let's dive back to it. So in the aftermath of all that, right, we finally get here to 9 years ago, to a flashback here of Harry and Gwen Stacy getting married. And in the middle of their reception here, this is where Harry's parents, they cut in. Norman goes to dance with Gwen, and then of course the mom dances with Harry. But then there's this like little interesting conversation that happens here between Gwen and Norman. Gwen starts off by saying, he's like, "So do I need to say it?" And then she replies back, she's like, "Well, I'm not a mind reader, sir, so I'm afraid you're going to have to." So he continues on. He's like, "Okay, fine. I think you could have done better." To which she replies, she's like, "That's funny because I said the same thing to your wife." To which, of course, Norman finds funny. He's like, "See, that's exactly what I mean. You got some steel in you." But he's like, "I want you to promise me something, new daughter of mine." And he says, "Don't ever let him distract you from what you were put on this earth to do." And it's in that moment where I pause a little bit, because I'm like, does Norman Osborn know? Like, does he know? Right? So then Gwen replies back. She's like, "I can make that promise." Then we flash back here to another time. It's now Christmas time here with Gwen and Harry. And he surprises her here with this gift. And it's this book called The World That Is and the World That Was by Dr. Jericho Drum. And he mentions how it was super hard to find a copy of that, and that what he had to pay for it, that he could have put a kid through college for that. Then he says this right here, which kind of irks Gwen. He says, "Still, I know you love this conspiracy stuff." So she replies back, she's like, "Conspiracy? Do you know what this book is about?" It suggests that the world has 2 timelines, the one we're currently living in and the one that we're supposed to be living in. Love that line, by the way. And then she continues on. She's like, "It's about tachyon particles and temporal echoes, not flat earths and chemtrails. It's the real reason you can't find this book anywhere." So then we get a little bit closer here to present time as we go back to 1 year ago. And here we see this older gentleman say, "Tell them." And then Gwen responds back. She's like, "We were right all along, Quentin," which got to be Quentin Beck, right? Which of course is Quentin Beck. And she continues on. She's like, "Everything we've worked toward, everything we believe in is real. The world is an illusion fabricated by one man telling a lie big enough to deceive all of humanity." And based on what we know that the Osborns already know here, they're talking about the Maker. And she continues. She's like, "And now he's trapped in a prison of his own making for the next 2 years." So when asked the question, they're like, "How do you know this? How do you know it's true?" And she lets them know. She's like, "Our recent elevation under Fisk only happened because my husband's parents were killed in the Stain/Stark explosion. As a result, and as you already know, our company Oscorp absorbed Stark/Stain. Then when we went rifling through all their corporate archives, we also learned of this, the real history of the world." So Quentin responds, he's like, "We need to act fast. Release the information and wipe the fog from the eyes of the world." But Gwen, she has a different idea. She's like, "No, you understand better after you look at the copies I brought for all of you. But we can't risk having any involvement traced back to us. Acting fast is flying too close to the sun. And that's exactly what got my father killed. I think we need a better delivery system." And now this is the reason why Gwen Stacy had approached Mary Jane and the Parkers. And this is the reason why Gwen wanted to fund the paper, so that she could use those 2 old grumpy men to take the scales off the eyes of the world. And you can see here, as she continues to have these discussions, you can see Quentin, I'm assuming here, Mysterio kind of like talking in their ear in the background. And just a reminder of the conversation that Gwen had with Mary Jane when they were in the bathroom. Gwen says to Mary Jane, she's like, "I was hoping, since you're their brand manager, that you could set up something between me and the grumpy old men of the paper." And how she's kind of in the mood to see if she can launch a pirate ship. Now in the background, Quentin is like, "And let the world ring forth, raise the walls, burn the fields, salt the earth, and destroy the empire. And then a few months later after that conversation, we see Harry talking to Otto and mentioning, "You were right. Ben and Jonah are way less interested in the superhero antics than all the Maker files we had. I hope we did the right thing giving it to them." This is working all to Gwen Stacy's plan, right? And Gwen continues on. She's like, "The wrong thing would be letting the world continue in the direction it's been heading most of our lives. If they want to do something about it, who are we to stop them?" And then Harry mentions to Gwen, he's like, "Hey, you want to hear something funny?" And he's like, "They thought it might be you in the Green Goblin suit. They thought you were Green Goblin." And of course, she's like, that's hilarious. But the reality is she's keeping the secret of being Mysterio away from Harry as well. So the irony in that, of course, is just funny. But then we get closer to the present time again as we see this other flashback that details months ago. And Quentin shows up again. And she's like, "What are you doing here now? I don't have time for this." But Quentin mentions, he's like, "I'm trying to. I found him, your husband." And he lets her know. Kraven took him, along with his sidekick. He caught their scent earlier and laid in wait until he could act. He kept it all very quiet. But now he's made the mistake of including a confidant of ours into his schemes. All because Kraven wants to hunt them in the Savage Land. He doesn't know about our alliance with the Mole Man. And he doesn't know that the Mole Man has told me. But Kraven does mean to kill them. And this is where Gwen chimes in. She's like, "The amulet passes from you to me in 2 days. Do I have that long? Or can you?" And then he says, "I'll talk to our friend, buy some time." So now we understand why Mysterio was there in the Savage Land. But before he leaves, Quentin says one other thing. "Are you aware that you're being followed?" And it's in that moment where we see Gwen barge into the room with Otto Octavius. Furiously, she's like, "You're having me watched?" And dude's like, "Yeah." And he lets her know, he's like, "It was Harry's plan, a security thing that he had me do. If he goes missing, which you inform me of, then the protocols snap into place. So yes, you're being followed and protected. And forgive me, I would normally never intrude on your privacy, but some of the things that you've been doing and places you've been going don't really add up." And how he's about to say, "I have a few questions," but then she just screams and says, "Otto, you're fired." And of course, that did come with some influence here by Quentin, who was like, he's too curious and he's too close, just cut him loose. And then we're reminded here of what happened with Harry Osborn here and Peter Parker when they were going up against Kraven. How Peter was being hesitant and didn't want to take out Kraven because that's just not what he does. He's not a killer. But then in that moment, what we see here is that Mysterio shows up and grabs Harry and says, "Do not speak a word. Not a word, and just watch." And it's in that moment when Kraven, seemingly we believe that Kraven had killed Harry Osborn. Peter believed that Kraven had killed Harry Osborn. So much so that Peter went into a rage. And this is also the reason why Mysterio had come in to stop Peter Parker from killing Kraven. But then what happens next here gets wild. Because when Kraven asks a question, he's like, "What are you playing at, Mysterio? And you dare to come between me and my hunt?" Or Mysterio responds back and says, "I do, but only because you came between me and mine." But then Mysterio picks up the gun, points it at Kraven, and says, "So long, comrade," and just fires a blam. To which Harry is like, "Mysterio?" And then she takes off the helmet and says, "Yes, dear." So Harry is flipping out. Now he's like, "Yo, what the heck is going on?" And that is where we finally get back to the now, where we see Gwen once again right in front of the tombstone here of Harry Osborn. So then we see Harry come on in with an umbrella and he's like, "So I'm dead. And the Green Goblin is not, which must mean I'm not the Green Goblin." And she simply responds back and says, "Yes." And as this continues, Harry's like, "Gwen? Question mark." She's like, "Yeah, Harry? Question mark." "Why didn't you tell me?" And she reveals, she's like, "I was raised in this and it's been part of my life longer than you have. I thought I could have both." And then he says, he's like, "Not if you keep lying. No way. And not if you're going to keep being so secretive, Gwen. That's not going to work." So she responds, she's like, "I'm Mysterio, Harry. And secretive is just another word for mysterious. That's who I am." So he sighs and he's like, "Okay, we'll figure it out. I know we will." And in that moment, she says, okay, so what's next? And he says, now we take the fight to them, and now we win. So now, with Harry being alive, this sets up what is supposed to be Harry's war, as they mentioned here in the next issue, which is not entirely clear exactly how that will go down, right? Especially considering, like, once Peter sees Green Goblin, homeboy is gonna be like, what the heck is going on? But in the next ensuing issues here, this is where we're supposed to start seeing more of the turf war here in New York, with Sinister Six versus the two Spider-Man. So I would love to hear what your thoughts are. I appreciate you watching. Also, special shout out here to our Patreons. We'll get an official scroll up list soon. Leave a like on this video here for the YouTube algorithm if you can. Subscribe if you are brand new to the channel. Check out our other links that are down below in the description here where you can follow us on socials. And as always, thank you so much for kicking it with Keepin' It Comic. Bye.